Hello, welcome to the channel that aims to bring some light into games left in the dark. This is From the Void. The reality of selling prices for physical copies in video games has recently made a hard turn for the worse due to the pandemic. People are stuck at home, video games became a more attractive form of entertainment, so the demand spiked. This video is not intended to suggest that you should buy any of these games. Many of them are clearly overpriced. I will be showing price charting and eBay prices of all these games. And I'll always be talking about the complete in-box prices. All these prices will be as of May 30th, 2021. This is rather intended to inform you of the current situation, as well as all the options you have for each of these games, whether they are in other consoles or in digital form, so that you can make the best decisions regarding the games that you're interested in. It's important to say that even though Sony reverted on the decision to close down the PlayStation Network stores for PlayStation 3 and Vita this summer, the threat of that happening in the near future is still looming over. Realistically, I wouldn't expect the digital stores to stay open for a lot longer. We've had reports from former Sony employees that there is a high level of fear of having the payment systems in the PlayStation 3 and Vita digital stores hacked because they are becoming outdated fast and will lose support from the service provider soon. So if any of you plan on getting the digital version of some of these games, we are right now in the probable window of opportunity for that. And with all that said, here are 50 of the most expensive PlayStation 3 games and your options for each. Okay, I have to start with this one because this is a very hidden gem and the price right now is ludicrous. Painkiller, Hell and Damnation. This is a Doom-style first-person shooter with everything to be expected from a title in this genre. Fast-paced action, all manner of demonic creatures, this kick-ass soundtrack, and a bunch of different and insane weapons to use in order to do all the demon slaying. Seriously, some of these weapons are pretty cool. The graphics are severely outdated, but if you don't mind that, this game brings a lot of mindless first-person shooting goodness. Now let's take a look at the prices for this one, shall we? This is one of the most expensive games on today's list. Take a wild guess how much this is currently going for. I'll just show you. Yes, that's right. The physical version of Painkiller, Hell and Damnation is going for $348 according to price charting. eBay's prices are even more expensive as of right now, going for outrageous $368. Now, I said I was going to show you your alternatives, and this one has 3 options. The PAL version is much cheaper, going for $24. There is a problem though. This game has 6 meaningful DLCs, unlocking new stages to play. And even though the PlayStation 3 is region-free, DLCs for the PlayStation 3 are not. So if your PSN account and the PlayStation 3 game disc you're using are not on the same region, you won't be able to play the DLC. There is also an Xbox 360 PAL version, but no US version. And unlike the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360 is region locked. I mean, there are a bunch of games that are region free for the Xbox 360, but this is not one of them, unfortunately. The third option is the best one. This game, luckily, still has a digital version going for $20, and you won't have any problems if you want to play the DLCs this way. So yeah, if you're interested in this first-person shooter, the digital version is the way to go right now. This next one is a very eccentric title, El Shaddai. This game certainly stands out in the visuals department, presenting some beautiful surreal and abstract sceneries coupled with a cel shading style that makes this a very unique looking game. The story is based on ancient religious texts and it's very hard to follow, but also very intriguing if you pay attention. This is an action game, but it's by no means a hack and slash. It actually punishes you if you treat it like such, especially in harder difficulties. The combat is to be handled methodically, minding your positioning, figuring when enemies are open, and then correctly timing your inputs. There are 3 very different types of weapons, providing a nice change of pace to the battles. It's a very satisfying combat if you stick with it. The issue now is the price. US PlayStation 3 physical copies are going for no less than $85 according to price charting, and eBay puts it close to $100. PAL versions are less expensive at $45. If you have the option, the best alternative is the Xbox 360 version going for $22, much cheaper. Next is probably the most underrated and obscure game on this list, Trinity: Souls of Zill All. Right? Have you ever heard of this? Most haven't for sure. The name of the game doesn't help. What is Zill All and how do you pronounce it? But you know what they say, don't judge a book by its cover. This may look like a bad low-budget game, and I can't be sure about the budget, but it's certainly not a bad game. This is an action RPG, or maybe an action hack and slash with RPG elements, with a pretty satisfying combat. It is very fluid and controls incredibly well. You can switch between your characters, which are all fun to play. You can use parts of the scenario to your advantage in battle, which was surprising to me. There are interesting battle mechanics where you can break enemy defenses by dodging and attacking at the right time. The combat is excellent. The enemies are varied and creative. The boss fights are great, some of the scenarios in the second half of the game are very well done, and it's just simply fun to play. The story may be bland and uninspired, and it looks pretty outdated at points, including some of the characters, but everything else makes for a positive game for sure. They trashed this title back in the day, but I disagree, and I guess I'm not the only one, cause this game is getting expensive. Price charting is currently placing it at close to $55, while the lowest eBay price I could find is even higher at $65. The PAL version, however, is still on the cheap, going for $20. Same price as the digital version of Trinity: Souls of Zill All. Give a chance to this poor game, it deserved so much better. Next up is a fantastically artful gem of a game, Puppeteer. This is an amazing game, there is nothing quite like it, before or since. Saying that this is just a 2D platformer is a huge understatement because this is a spectacle, and I mean it quite literally. From the very beginning throughout the whole duration, this game is presented as a theater play, a very animated one actually. The presentation in Puppeteer is jaw-dropping. You control Kotaro, this little puppet guy who can swap in different heads that have different context-sensitive abilities, and he also uses a scissor weapon called Calibrus that introduces a fun gameplay mechanism where you can cut parts of the scenery and release imprisoned souls from enemies. Unfortunately, Puppeteer is fast approaching the most expensive games on the PlayStation 3 catalog right now. Price charting is placing both US and PAL versions at around $75, while eBay options right now are around $80, so it still seems to be increasing right now. Luckily, you still have an inexpensive option. The digital PlayStation 3 version is going for $15, which is a very attractive price for the Puppeteer right now. This is an excellent game, presenting a quite satisfying gameplay involved by one of the best executions in the presentation aspect in all of video games. I highly advise anyone to get this title. One title that I think a lot of people don't know even exists, despite being from a famous franchise, is Yakuza Dead Souls. This time the franchise tried dabbling into the zombie shooter genre of all things, stepping away from being a brawler. Unfortunately, the shooting mechanics are kinda poor in comparison to the great hand-to-hand combat the series is known for. The story, on the other hand, is a highlight despite being non-canonical, and the presentation as a whole is spectacular in true Yakuza fashion, and the humor is also great. But the shooting will probably present a problem for most. It's not a complete failure though, in my opinion. I still see this as a worthwhile game to play, especially if you're a big Yakuza fan, which there has been an increasing number of recently, I feel like. This game is going for very high prices currently. On eBay, the cheapest option was $75 for the US version, while price charting places this game at $84 for the US and $62 for the European version. But there is a far less expensive option in the digital PlayStation 3 version, which goes for $20. Next up is Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel. This is one of the several spin-offs on the very long-running Legend of Heroes series, and let me tell you, this is a spectacular JRPG. The combat mechanics simply hit all the right notes in my opinion. You have area of effect abilities, you can link attacks from characters together, it's just turn-based RPG heaven in my opinion. The story is very good, there is a whole bunch of likable characters, this is a great game to delve into for weeks and enjoy yourself the whole time. Unfortunately, even though this game has multiple different versions out there, they are all expensive right now. The US PlayStation 3 physical is going for $41 as per price charting, while eBay puts it at $50. PAL versions are the cheapest right now, going for $27. This game is also available digitally on the PlayStation Vita, PlayStation 4 and Steam for $40, but you can wait for discounts on this one, which may be a good idea. You can also find the physical form on the Vita or PlayStation 4, but they're both going for even more expensive prices than the PlayStation 3 physical version. This next one needs no introduction. No More Heroes, Heroes Paradise. Believe it or not, the PlayStation 3 version of the original No More Heroes is becoming expensive. That's probably because this is still the only way to play this enhanced version called Heroes Paradise, that has different costumes for several characters, improved combat mechanics, quality of life improvements, several new boss encounters and a lot more. If you're not familiar with the series, No More Heroes is an absurdly over-the-top mission-based hack and slash made by the famous Suda51. And you will likely either love this or hate it. It's very hard to be neutral toward this game. It's about the aspirations of main character Travis Touchdown in becoming the #1 assassin. The entire game glorifies violence, so it's really not for everyone. The highlight in No More Heroes are the boss fights, which are all different from each other in really creative ways. Other than that, No More Heroes is a janky game that is very one note. But if you happen to like that note, it's a lot of fun for you. The issue now is that this is going for over $40 according to price charting for the US version and almost $60 for the PAL version. And on eBay, the cheapest US version I could find was $66, so it seems to be increasing. You have two other options: the original Wii version and the part of the Wii version but in HD on the Switch, both going for $20 right now. Next up, Lost Dimension. This is a great JRPG title, especially in the combat department, where it brings a lot of the mechanics from strategy titles into the mix, such as positioning, giving turns from one character to another, and a high level of customization for each character's skill trees. Lost Dimension also looks really good in my opinion, and I found the story pretty interesting as well. This is one of the highest priced games on this list. It is going for $130 on eBay for the US version, even though price charting says that the prices should be much lower at around $80 or $30 for the European version. The Vita version is also very expensive at over $100. The jump in price in this case is also due to the very sad fact that the digital versions of this game were very recently delisted from the PlayStation stores in March 2021. But fortunately, there is also an inexpensive option, the Steam version, that goes for $25. Next up, Splatterhouse. This is a reboot of the franchise where they intended to be faithful to the series' origins by having the gameplay be very simple and the difficulty very high. It's hit or miss depending on your tastes. It has some glaring problems with unnecessary and janky platforming that doesn't really add anything positive, and the gameplay can feel a little bit shallow. But if you appreciate a challenging brawler, this can be a good amount of fun for you. You'll also need to look past all the blood on the screen. I mean seriously, at times it's such a ridiculous amount of blood that it's hard to see what's going on beneath it. Now let's talk prices. According to price charting, Splatterhouse is being sold for $90 for the US version and $62 for the PAL version. eBay offers are also close to the prices on price charting. There is also the Xbox 360 version for less expensive at $50. This unfortunately being the best option for this game. Next up is one of the most different looking JRPGs I've ever played, Time and Eternity. I was really impressed with how this game looks and the camera position chosen for it. I really enjoyed it, but I know of people who hate this, so I guess it's a matter of taste. This is an RPG crossed with visual novel, so it will only really cater to a specific audience. The combat is pretty cool in my opinion. It's not turn-based in formal sense, but you need to treat it as such since you can react to enemies' attacks. What I really liked is that you can stay far away attacking with the main character's rifle or approach the enemy to engage in melee attacks. This changes the way your character reacts to the incoming enemy attacks too. If you time your button presses correctly, you can defend to take less damage while afar or counterattack when up close. You can always dodge if you press right or left at the correct time. This makes for a very different and interesting battle system which I enjoyed. If anything, Time and Eternity provides a very interesting and unique experience among RPGs. But it's been getting expensive. The cheapest I could find on eBay was almost $80, while price charting says that copies are going for closer to $70 for the US version and $30 for the PAL version. Sadly, this game has no other versions out there. It used to have a PlayStation 3 digital version, but it was delisted way back in 2015. Now a totally kick-ass hack and slash, Afro Samurai. This is an adaptation of the manga series of the same name that is actually incredibly faithful to its origins, at least in the visuals department where it really shines in my opinion, providing some very stylized graphics and violence that has aged very well in my opinion. The gameplay is also very positive. It is a hack and slash, so it's not gonna save it if you don't like this genre, but it has particularities that set it apart and make it interesting, such as the focus mode and especially the fact that this game has no HUD whatsoever. There is nothing on screen other than the action, no health bar or anything. That's because the game asks that you pay attention to the character himself to, for example, figure when his focus mode is ready by looking at the glowing pendant. It's all very striking, this is undoubtedly a cool game. The problem here is that the second half can be frustratingly difficult, so if you're not a fan of steep difficulty curves in games, this is not for you. Now, let's talk prices. According to price charting, this game is going for 35 bucks right now. I found a copy on eBay for 25 bucks, but it seems to be an outlier. PAL versions are cheap enough still, however. Another option would be going for the Xbox 360 version, which is also less than 20 bucks. I actually found one for less than 10 bucks on eBay. Next up are the two games on the Tonelico series on the PlayStation 3, Tonelico Qoga and Nosurge. These are two entries that play more as a mix of RPG and visual novel, with a lot of character development, so these will be for people who already know that they like these types of games. Where they differ the most from one another is on the combat side. Nosurge, which is a prequel to the series, is a turn-based RPG, where Qoga is an action RPG similar to the Tales of series. Both are great in the combat side actually. Nosurge presents battles in waves of enemies, which is something I haven't seen anywhere outside this title, and Qoga has an interesting mechanic where just not pressing anything puts your character in a defensive stance, so you just need to get the enemy's timings and put your character on neutral when receiving damage, which I think it's a great idea for an action RPG. Another interesting aspect in Qoga is that there will be battles where you will need to defend a character and impede enemies from entering their heroine field. This introduces a welcome new dynamic to the battles. These games, however, are heavy on the fan service side, so be advised. Nosurge is the more expensive of the two titles, going for over 60 bucks for the US and 35 for the European as per price charting. But eBay prices are much higher, approaching 100 bucks for the US. There is an enhanced version of Nosurge available for the Vita that is 283 bucks physically, which is absolutely insane. You can also opt for the digital version of Nosurge that goes for 40 bucks on Vita, also the enhanced version, or 50 for the not enhanced version on the PlayStation 3, which just makes no sense. Tonelico Qoga is cheaper at around over 30 bucks for the US version or a bit below for the PAL version. This one is not available digitally, unfortunately. Following up with absurd Lollipop Chainsaw. This is another game by Suda51. It's kind of the sister game to No More Heroes. It's as much action focused and as much over the top as No More Heroes, also featuring great boss fights. But this time you control 18-year-old Juliet Starlin, who is very athletic and proficient in wielding a huge ass chainsaw for some reason, and this time instead of assassin versus assassin, it's cheerleader versus zombies. Much like No More Heroes, you will either love this or hate it, but I gotta say, I had a blast playing this game. It doesn't break any new grounds on the action genre, but I liked the gameplay. Juliet is not very fast since her weapon is so awkward, which makes the combat more methodical, and this turned out as a positive in my opinion. Too bad it doesn't provide a lot of depth, it's just the same thing throughout the whole game for the most part, but still a fun game for sure in my opinion. But the prices are not though. Price charting states that it goes for over 70 bucks for the US version, while European versions are placed around 50. On eBay, I could find the US version for less expensive at 54 bucks, but it seems to be an outlier. The alternative here is the Xbox 360 version that goes for 20 bucks, which is a fair price for this game, I would say. Next up is the Sly Collection. This is a compilation of the first 3 titles in the Sly Cooper series remastered in HD. These are all great 3D platformers that are still some of the most underappreciated in this genre, which is a shame. You can sneak around as Sly and play as other characters such as Murray here. There are minigame sections to change things up. I mean, these are very fun games for sure. But the physical versions are all getting expensive. Price charting states that the US is going for $56 while PAL versions are $49. eBay's prices are close to that, with the cheapest US copy I could find priced at $50. Your other options are the Vita version, which is a bit cheaper at $33, and the digital version on PlayStation 3 or Vita, where you can get all 3 games for $15, probably the best option. Now, Shadows of the Damned. This is yet another action-packed Suda51 game, and in my opinion, it's the best one on this list. It's a very disturbing game full of horrendous scenes, and it's all about hunting demons and trying to save the main guy's girlfriend. The highlight is on the gameplay. This time a third-person shooter with a lot of different mechanics, which makes the combat quite interesting. I liked it a lot. If you can get past or don't mind all the crude humor and glorified gore found in this game, there's a lot to enjoy in the gameplay. Price charting places this game above $60 for the US version, but PAL versions are cheaper at $26. eBay's prices are close to $55 at least. Your other option is looking for the Xbox 360 version for $30. Now, X-Men Origins Wolverine. This is one of them rare movie-based games that are actually really good. I remember really liking the idea of lunging Wolverine to circumvent the disadvantage that he would have against enemies with guns. This is a game that remains fun today. It's a very violent hack and slash where they didn't hold anything back. It's pretty sick. This game used to be dirt cheap, but now it's commanding $40 for the US version as per price charting. PAL versions remain inexpensive at around $10. eBay's prices are closer to $30. You also have 2 other options, the Xbox 360 version for around $22 and Wii versions for dirt cheap still, around $6. Next up is Tales of Grace's F. This is a remake of a Wii original game that never left Japan. Tales of Grace's F is among the better Tales games for sure. It has a slow beginning where you control the 10-year-old versions of the main characters, but after the time jump, things get much better and the game shines in the gameplay and story departments to a very satisfactory degree. In the combat side, I really like the fact that your main character is nimble enough to side dodge enemies' attacks, which adds a nice layer to the battles. Price charting is putting it around $53, which is a bit higher than the least expensive one I found on eBay. PAL versions, however, are still on the cheap side for around $20. You also have the option of going digital for this one for $35 on PlayStation 3 only, a bit expensive. Next up is honestly just an excuse for me to include the music you are about to hear in another video of mine. Fist of the North Star, Ken's Rage. Just kidding, this is a cool Musou type game that features all the violence to be expected from this franchise. It's not anything spectacular, but great for fans of Dynasty Warriors or this manga and anime series. It's a bit slower than your typical Dynasty Warriors game, especially depending on the character you choose, which I felt was a good change of pace for this type of game. This one has been getting expensive as of late. Price charting places it at over $60 for the US and $40 for the PAL version, while on eBay the cheapest I could find was $83. Now, there is still an inexpensive option for this game. The physical Xbox 360 version is going for 15 bucks. Next is Disgaea D2. This is a great strategy game that is actually the true sequel to the first Disgaea game. There are other Disgaea games with the number 2 on the title, but they don't follow directly the story of the first one. This series is among the best strategy RPGs out there, with incredibly deep mechanisms in their battle systems, balanced with a lot of humor in the story. And this entry is certainly among the best of this franchise. Disgaea games are known for being grindy though, so be advised. The US version of this title has increased recently to around 40 bucks according to eBay, while price charting puts it at 34 bucks and 14 for the PAL version, still cheap. Your only other option is the digital version for the PlayStation 3 that goes for 20 bucks, which is a more attractive price right now. Next up is a great collection of games that very few know about. Best of PlayStation Network Volume 1. This compilation brings 4 games, all very good. In my opinion, the best one is Sound Shapes. This is a brilliant side-scroller platformer that doubles as a music creator, where reaching the collectible shapes on screen unlocks beats or notes to the music. It may seem like a gimmick, but the campaign mode is just a joy to play through, not only because of the delightful musical gameplay, but also because the actual platforming mechanics are great in this game. Your ball can stick to light surfaces or roll faster without sticking depending on the button presses. And if you're so inclined, you can create songs in this game in a very intuitive mode. This is a unique game like nothing else, a must play in my opinion. The second title is When Vikings Attack, which I covered previously, an extremely simple game where you control a group of regular citizens protecting their land from the invading Vikings, by simply throwing anything at them. This game controls super well and it's just fun, in single or multiplayer, co-op or competitive. The third title is Fat Princess, which I think is a well-known game. It's Team Blue versus Team Red to see who can get the princess from the opposing castle first. In this one you will be swapping between multiple jobs according to the situation, and the balance here is pretty great. And finally, Tokyo Jungle, which I also already covered. A very creative and odd game where you control a multitude of different animals trying to survive in wild post-apocalyptic Tokyo. This is a spectacular game, however absurd the premise may seem. Now, probably since this is the only way to have any of these 4 great games in physical form, the prices for this collection have skyrocketed recently. They were reaching 300 bucks when I last covered this title, but since Sony went back on the decision to close the stores, the prices reduced a lot. Still expensive though, going for 76 bucks according to price charting and 90 bucks on eBay right now for the US version. European versions are less expensive at 56 bucks. If you wish, you can also buy each title digitally. Tokyo Jungle and Fat Princess are priced at $15, while When Vikings Attack and Sound Shapes are 10 bucks. When Vikings Attack is also available on the Vita, and Sound Shapes is on the Vita and PlayStation 4. Next on the list is Time Crisis Razing Storm. This is actually a compilation of 3 games: Time Crisis 4 arcade version, a lesser known Namco on-rails shooter called Deadstorm Pirates, as well as the titular Time Crisis Razing Storm. Oddly enough, the best value in this compilation is found in the 2 parts, Time Crisis 4 and Deadstorm Pirates, because Razing Storm adds a story mode that tries to take the light gun gameplay to the first-person shooter genre and fails. It does have an arcade mode as well, which is the best part of Razing Storm, so it's not a total waste. If you are into on-rail shooters with the Move or regular controller, this is a great collection providing many hours of fun. The US version of this game has increased to the $60 mark recently, according to eBay and price charting as well. Europe is once again luckier to still be able to find this easily at around 20 bucks. Next up is the most expensive Ratchet and Clank game, Into the Nexus. It's also one of the best in the series in my opinion. It has all the best aspects that made the franchise famous, such as great graphics with impeccable art direction and colorful environments to explore, great action-adventure gameplay, and a bunch of different and wacky weapons at your disposal. If you like Ratchet games, Nexus will most likely not disappoint. Can't say the same about the prices though, for the physical version at least. They escalated a lot recently, surpassing $60 on eBay for the US version. Price charting also places this above the $60 mark, while PAL versions are half that price. Best option however is the digital PlayStation 3 version for $10. Following up with a very flawed game that is nonetheless becoming very expensive, Blades of Time. Okay, this is probably the worst game on this list. I mean, it has positive aspects, but it really needed a lot more polish, especially on the combat side, where the attacks don't really feel like they connect when hitting the enemy, which is a cardinal sin for an action title. And the camera needed a lot more work too. I mean, take a look at this. Good grief. It's a huge shame actually, because I can see a lot of potential in this game. This could have been like a 7 or 8 out of 10 if the combat was a lot better. Instead, this is like a 5.5 at best. I still had some fun with it though. Some things remain positive, like the magic attacks you learn, the challenge presented despite the combat jankiness, and the exploration aspect. I guess enough people also see some good in Blades of Time, since the price recently increased a lot. Price charting puts it at around $40 for both the US and the PAL version, but the cheapest I could find on eBay was $90. Wow, this is really not worth that. You actually have 3 much better options for this one. The Xbox 360 version going for very cheap still, at a bit over $10, the Steam version for $10 with improved graphics, and the Switch version for $20 digitally, also with improved graphics and an overhauled multiplayer mode. Yeah, not a lot of people know that this game got ported to the Switch recently. God knows why, since they didn't fix any of the gameplay problems as far as I know. Next is a perfectly splendid game, Odin Sphere Leifthrasir. This is seriously one of the best games on this list. It's pretty well known, but if you haven't played this one, it's a side-scroller action game with RPG elements from magnificent developer Vanillaware, and it plays like heaven. The controls are incredibly well thought out and intuitive, and at the same time, engaging and deep. You have access to a bunch of different characters that play differently, and it's just an amazing high-quality game that should not be missed. The prices for the PlayStation 3 version are getting expensive at around $40 on eBay and price charting for the US version, while European versions can be found for half that price. The digital PlayStation 3 version is also expensive at $50. The PlayStation 2 version doesn't have a bunch of the improvements from the remastered version, but it's cheaper at $20. Or you can download this original version on the PlayStation 3 for $10. There is also the Vita version with all the enhancements that can be found physically for $85 or digitally for $40. Finally, the PlayStation 4 version goes for $60 digitally or $30 physical. I think that the PlayStation 4 physical version is a really good option. Now, White Knight Chronicles. This game disc includes both White Knight Chronicles 1 and 2, which is great since the games link with each other. You can carry over your character from one to the other, which is very cool. Now, these are very odd games. They are JRPGs, but take inspiration in MMOs for the mechanisms, although not completely. But as soon as you start, you'll get that MMO feeling, for better or worse, because of how the HUD looks and skill dispositions and all that, but they actually offer a combat that is much deeper than the typical MMO, especially ones of this period. The main negative aspect they bring from MMOs is the dedication required, until the games really become satisfying, but once they do, it becomes a rather enjoyable experience for fans of JRPGs, especially the second one. At launch, this game could be played online, but the servers were shut down. I remember these games being dirt cheap, $5 or so, but now they increased to $35 according to price charting, and on eBay I could find copies going for a bit less, around $30. PAL versions are also not cheap anymore, so for this one you'll have to fork over at least $30 or hope for a decrease in the near future. Next up is Asura's Wrath. This is a deeply cinematic hack and slash featuring an interesting story and characters in a completely over-the-top setting that is sure to be a lot of entertainment for action fans out there. The prices, however, are not at all amusing. The US version goes for around $90 according to both price charting and eBay, while the European version is a bit cheaper but still expensive at $55. The best option, but still a high price for an almost 10 years old game, is the Xbox 360 version, going for around $40. Next is a criminally overlooked JRPG, Cross Edge. This is a crossover game that mixes characters from a bunch of different franchises, such as Darkstalkers, Disgaea, and the Atelier series. And amazingly, the story is actually really good in this, which is not something to be expected from a game that crosses over so many universes together. The combat is surprisingly deep in Cross Edge, with the possibility to combo attacks from different characters together and form one more powerful move, as well as a lot of other combat mechanisms. There is actually a lot of information on screen. There would be a lot to learn in this game, so it's probably more for the JRPG hardcore fans, but a great game here, for sure. It has increased in price recently to the mark of $40 for the US version according to both price charting and eBay, while PAL versions are about half that price. Since this one has no DLCs, the PAL version is a good idea if you can find one, since PlayStation 3s are region free, and especially since there are no other options for Cross Edge. This is a physical only PlayStation 3 exclusive game. Following up with Folklore. This is a fantastic action-adventure game with a very nice mechanism where you can absorb the enemies to turn them into attacks to allocate into the face buttons in battle and improve your stats. This is certainly a hidden gem that I covered from a DLC perspective in my previous video on this series, so please check that out if this game piques your interest. Unfortunately, this is one of the few games on this list that doesn't have any cheap options to purchase. This is a physical-only PlayStation 3 exclusive, so your only options are the US or PAL versions of this game, and they are both very expensive right now. Price charting and eBay put this game around $90 for the US version, while PAL versions are going for $84 according to price charting. This is a great game, but sadly the prices are too high right now. Now, the original Nier. Funny that Nier is increasing in price, even though a completely remade version of Nier just came out. If you haven't played any of them yet, this is a weird game. I really enjoyed it, but it's very odd, very violent, and manages to create an interesting dying world that makes you feel very uneasy throughout the game. I guess that because people are interested in the comparison between the original and the remake, this one jumped in price recently. Price charting puts both the US and the PAL versions at close to $40, while eBay prices are higher at $50 for the US version. The Xbox 360 is also pricey at around $40, but in this case the better option in my opinion is going with the remake, Nier Replicant Bunch of Numbers, or waiting for this one to drop in price, unless of course you're a collector or a hardcore Nier fan. This next one is the cheapest of all games on this list, but I still think it's worth including because this is a great game and it's the most expensive it has ever been. I'm talking about Heavenly Sword. This is a fantastic action title, one of the best of its generation, both in gameplay and in graphics. The combat is solid, where the awesome looking main character Tonelico is able to change into 3 different stances, providing a welcome variety to your moves to take care of the incredible amount of enemies on screen at once, which is very impressive for its time actually. It also changes up the gameplay in positive ways, with the inclusion of shooting sections that allow you to use the 6-axis tilt capabilities to adjust the path of the projectiles, and it actually works really well. I really enjoyed the sections. The main negative about this game is the length. This is a rather short game lasting around 8 hours. As I said, this is not super expensive yet, but it's been trending up at the highest price ever. Price charting places this game at around $22 for the US version, while PAL versions remain dirt cheap at $4. eBay's prices are also not super expensive, as the cheapest I could find for the US version was $17. Next is another great compilation of classic PlayStation 2 titles, the Jak and Daxter Collection. This brings the 3 first games on the franchise to glorious HD: Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy, Jak 2, and Jak 3. Not much I need to say about this very well-known series. These are 3 of the all-time best action platformers ever made, so if you're into that kind of game, this is a complete no-brainer. The only question will be which version to choose. That's why I'm here. The PlayStation 3 version is close to $28 for the US and $34 for the PAL version, as per price charting, while on eBay I was able to find the US version for $21. You also have the Vita option of the same collection, but the physicals are very pricey at $74. There is also a slightly different collection on PlayStation 4 called Jak and Daxter Bundle that comes with all 3 games plus Jak X Combat Racing for $40 digitally. And finally, probably the best option in terms of price is the digital version of the collection with the 3 games on PlayStation 3 or Vita for $10. Next is Siren Blood Curse. This is certainly a hidden gem among the horror survival games out there. It has a very unique and interesting mechanic where at tense moments the screen splits in half and you can see the perspective of your character as well as the enemy, with an interesting special effect that demonstrates where each character is. This is quite thrilling actually. Siren Blood Curse may still be a hidden gem, but enough people know about it, resulting in a steep increase in price recently. It also doesn't help that this is a PAL exclusive game in physical form. There is no US version. Price charting puts it at $66, but on eBay the cheapest I could find was $120. This is the biggest discrepancy between the 2 sites on this list. Luckily, you still have the chance to get this game in digital form for $20 while the stores remain open, which is by far the least expensive option right now. Next up is one of the best compilation of games on the planet, the Orange Box. This collection comes with Half-Life 2, Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and 2, the original Portal, and Team Fortress 2. These are all very well-known games. I don't think I need to go into too much detail about them. The 3 Half-Life titles are some of the best sci-fi first-person shooters ever. The original Portal is a groundbreaking puzzle game in first person, and Team Fortress 2 is a great fast-paced shooter with a bunch of cool classes and a nice art style. As far as I know, other than the PC CD-ROM version of all these games, the Orange Box is the only way to have them in physical form. This compilation was notoriously one of the cheapest for a long time, considering the high quality content, but it has recently increased to more expensive territory, with both price charting and eBay agreeing on the $35 price tag for the US version. PAL versions are still cheaper at less than $20, so that can be an option if you find one. The Xbox 360 version also goes for below $20. And finally, of course, you can opt for the Steam versions of these games. Team Fortress 2 actually is free on Steam, while Half-Life 2 goes for $10, Episode 1 for $5, Episode 2 for $8, and Portal for $10. Now, Drakengard 3. This is the 3rd time I talk about this game, so I'm gonna be brief. Drakengard 3 is a great hack and slash with RPG elements in the same universe of the Nier franchise, with very cool characters and story, and a great gameplay in my opinion. I mean, it's not perfect by any means, but is a positive title for sure. The cutscenes are amazing too. Now, as for price, this was going for 60 bucks on my first video on this topic, but it has now increased to over 80 bucks for the US version according to both price charting and eBay. I couldn't find the PAL information on this game. I know it exists, but price charting doesn't show it and there's nothing on eBay being sold. But fret not, your alternative is the digital version that goes for 15 bucks, and there are a bunch of DLCs that I also recommend. This is a very worthwhile game in my opinion. And finally, the most expensive PlayStation 3 game in existence, and one of the most expensive games period, NBA Elite 11. The only reason for this being so expensive, seriously, you're not gonna believe the prices for this, is that NBA Elite 11 was cancelled after development because EA deemed it too low quality for its standards. Yeah. But some copies still got into circulation. It's now so rare that it can go for any kind of price really. Price charting puts this one at almost $900, while other sources state that it's usually sold between $2,000 to $4,000. And right now, eBay has one copy being sold for over $25,000. And this is currently being discounted at 10%, so it was previously $28,000. This is so insane considering that this game is still available for iOS devices for the steep price of $0. Yeah, it's free. The PlayStation 3 version had the control scheme completely overhauled, but it seemed that it only made it worse. And since EA cancelled the damn thing due to quality being too low, I mean, EA cancelling a game due to poor quality is really something. So the only justification for this price is due to the demand of hardcore collectors who want to complete the entire PlayStation 3 collection. And that's it, we made it! 50 games that are now expensive for the PlayStation 3. Hope this was informative, entertaining, or helpful to you. If so, please subscribe to help this channel grow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.